So we just decided we're going to be here together to listen, think, analyse, keep in mind objective. Neither blindly believing or blindly rejecting. With the attitude you're going to take some tools from it all to use in your daily life if it's appropriate. To help you develop your amazing potential so you can be a benefit to others, because we all live in this world together. We're very interdependent social creatures. Develop the two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion. Okay. Is this a bit loud? It's a bit kind of... It's not too loud.
It's good.
So I'll sing a little prayer to Tibet that expresses that idea. Sangye choram soke chornam la jancho baruragni kyab suchi yagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye dropa sho sangye choram soke chornam la jancho baruragni kyab suchi yagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa sho sangye charan soke chornam la jancho baruragni kyab suchi lagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa sho. So why don't we start by doing 5, maybe 4 quality minutes focusing. It's called meditation. Don't get all holy when you hear that word. It's a psychological skill. Think of it that way. It makes it more kind of rigorous rather than spacing out, So technically it's really simple. To actually accomplish it in the long term is stunningly difficult. Not because in its nature it's a difficult technique. It's only because we're addicted to following every thought, whereas focus is consciously not following every thought, and that's virtually impossible for us until we're really, really practiced in this, really trained. It takes a long time. So we'll start somewhere. So I'll just explain briefly a couple of things. First of all, the body. It's important to have the body in a conducive position. So, all these Asians, because it's their culture anyway to sit cross-legged, but all the great meditators have found there's something very conducive about what they call full lotus position. So since we're little kids and we've been sitting this way, it would be very easy. Because many people are doing this stuff really seriously for like years on end. They're sitting upright on their own with their legs in full lotus position, not leaning against anything. And there's something very conducive about this in the more advanced stages to really enable the subtler, the mind and the subtler physical energies to all flow very appropriately. And this is not meant to be a cosmic statement, it's a technical thing, And because if are serious meditators, you need to have the body upright so all the subtler energies can flow, then it's really important to be upright, So if we can sit full lotus position, great. The Dalai Lama said it's really auspicious if you can, even for a moment, to start your session, because it sort of creates the cause to be able to when we get more advanced. So the second thing, if you can't put the 2 legs, each instep on the other thigh, this is the ideal way to sit. If you can't do that, 1 leg on the other thigh. If you can't do that, ordinary prospect. If you can't do that, sit in a chair. If you can't do that, lie down. Do what you can, But there's logic to all of it. So the first thing is, the key thing about the body, the sitting will be this. If you can't do that, fine, we're mostly in chairs anyway. So the next really crucial thing is to have your back straight. So that means for all of us, for this few minutes, don't lean against the back of the chair. Sit with your feet firmly planted on the ground and sit upright. So pick yourself up. In other words, hold up your own body. Don't slump. Because as soon as you slump, the body gets lethargic, and so the mind gets lethargic. It's really extra hard then to keep your discipline and focus. So the back should be straight. They all talk about how think of your spine like an arrow, ramrod straight. And the coccyx is the arrow, the head of the arrow pointing directly into the earth. The third thing, the next one, is the hands. So you see sometimes in all the Tibetan or the Buddhist art, the hands like this. So that's a classical position. There's said to be some whatever. But if you want to sit like that, you have your hands in this position, gesture, or mudra, hands together, left underneath, right on top. the thumbs touching here, forming a triangle. But if you don't want that, you can put your hands here like this. Be very relaxed about it. The third point. The fourth point is and the main part now is the top, the head, or the shoulders first. Have your shoulders not crunched like this, upright, very upright, but not tense. So a way I like to say this: if you think of your spine, you think of your whole skeleton. If it was hanging on a hanger, it would be straight, wouldn't it? Absolutely straight. So imagine your skeleton completely straight, ramrod straight. But now consciously relax all the muscles. Flop the abdomen. We always keep that tight. We don't want a little fat, isn't it? So we always squeeze it in, you know. Relax the muscles, flop the muscles. Keep your body upright, the infrastructure, your bones upright, but the flesh, the soft parts, completely relaxed. That's a really good thing to notice. This is crucial. You've got to be relaxed, but alert and upright. So your muscles are relaxed. Shoulders upright, muscles relaxed. And the head. Okay, several things about the head. First, it's really helpful to have the head slightly tilted forward, not thrust back like that. That makes the mind more agitated. Slightly tilted forward, chin tucked in, just a little bit. The jaw relaxed. Lips slightly apart. And then this is odd, but it's got logic to it. Have the tip of your tongue resting behind the top teeth, just in the palate. And this is because when you're a serious meditator doing hours and months and years of this, or hours at a time, it prevents you from dribbling, just practically, and it prevents you from having to swallow the spit all the time. Tip of the tongue behind the top teeth, lips slightly apart, jaw relaxed. Then the eyes. All the great meditators, serious ones, they all say it's best, because meditators doing long retreats are meditating in the day as well as the night, or maybe in the day, and because it's light, and they say it's really helpful to have your eyes open so the light can come in, which keeps your mind alert and sharp. But because most of us get distracted by all the visuals, then it's not useful maybe in the beginning. So have your eyes closed. But crucially, your eyes beneath your eyelids should be looking down, as if you're looking along your nose towards the ground. This is kind of a classical position that's been found by all the great meditators to be most conducive to help your mind, which does the job. The body doesn't meditate. The mind does meditate. The mind meditates, the consciousness. But the body in a conducive position really helps. So your legs, back upright, muscles relaxed, jaw, shoulders square but relaxed, hands, whatever position you like, head slightly forward, chin tucked in, lips apart, tip of the tongue resting behind the top teeth, breathing through your nose, eyes looking down as if you're looking at the ground. This is the position. So sort of set into this now and then get very unself-conscious about it. So now I'll explain for a couple of minutes what we're going to do, and then we'll do it, okay? So what we're aiming to do, very simple, incredibly simple, is simply focus on, attempt to pay attention to one thing. So a nice analogy for me is if you're in a really busy room full of all exciting things and exciting people, and you make a decision to simply focus on that one spot on the wall. You don't ask the people to be quiet, you don't ask them to leave, you make a strong decision that you're going to pay attention to that spot on the wall, and you're going to not, get trapped by what everybody is saying. So the full room is like our head, full of thoughts, never stopping, and sounds outside. And because our mind, it's like our mind is very weak, because we're addicted to our sensory objects, and so we get distracted incredibly easily. We're like a child, like a little kid. As soon as it hears a sound, they're going to go over there. They see something, they're going to go over there. Our mind's like a little bird, No strength, no strength. I would put it that way. We're like our mind's really weak, and because we're not paying attention, we're scattered from the time we're born. No wonder we're crazy, I mean, from this practical point of view, we don't even know how to focus our mind. We get so upset when we hear a loud noise, don't we? We hear one noise which is not the noise we like to hear, we get upset. We see something delicious, we run to it like a baby. This is our mind now. We're going to go into these parts of our mind that cause us to do this. So what we're trying, this simple technique is a very profound training. You might not get single-pointed concentration anywhere near it, but you're training your mind, you're training your attention, you're training your mind to be like grown up. not to follow, and not to demand that people be quiet, people be silent, there's a traffic be quiet, and you do this, and you do that. It's putting all the information, it's putting all the emphasis on the outside. It's blaming the outside. You're deciding that your mind is powerful, and you can decide that you're going to pay attention to your breath, and you don't care about the outside. This is a powerful concept. It means you're in charge, basically. There's a lot of commentary there. It's not saying this in the text like this, but this is really what we're doing. So it's a very simple technique. It's just it takes courage and effort and discipline to begin to accomplish anything. And don't wait for some magical thing to happen. So the first thing, that's the first practical point. Well, I'll still explain. So what this particular technique is not, is a relaxation technique. One of the biggest confusions is we tend to think meditation equals relaxation. Well, there are lots of relaxation techniques and we need relaxing. We're all nuts, you know. We love it, but lie down and relax. But it's much easier than sitting up there straight. It's ridiculous. This is not a relaxation technique. This is a very disciplined, psychological skill you are trying to cultivate. So it really does demand discipline, rigor, and clarity. So it's not for relaxation. Of course, you need relaxed as well, but that's a bonus. In other words, it takes effort. You know yourself, when you first begin to drive a car, you know, you've got to relax, of course, but in the beginning it's chaos, isn't it? You have incredible attention. You've got to remember every detail. If you start relaxing, you'll forget what you're doing, you'll crash. Eventually, when you're a good driver, then you can relax. We know that. Same here. So don't mystify this and think it's something weird, you know? It's really a practical skill. Like I said, a communist can do this. It is not religious in any manner or form. So it's not a relaxation technique. The goal of this is not to sort of go in deep and have some mystical experience. Not to sort of some magical, mysterious thing. It's a simple, practical skill that everybody should learn. So the actual job you're doing, the actual action you're doing is paying attention. That's all, paying attention. We hear that, pay attention, you know? We hear that. So I'm going to talk more about the components of the mind that enable us to do this job well. I'll do that later when we talk about the actual way the Buddhists talk about the mind. But here, we can hear this enough. So what we're going to do is just for maybe 4 minutes. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, I tell you. Even a minute is good, I promise. So the goal is this: we're going to have a strong determination. I will just pay attention to, and we're going to choose an object. You can choose any object you like. You can pay attention to your shoes. It doesn't matter. That's why it's not a holy thing. We're going to pay attention to something simple: the sensation at your nostrils as the air goes in and out. That's our focal point. So the idea is I'm going to pay attention to that breath as it goes out. You're following the breath as it goes out and in. And that's it. Don't put any more drama onto it. It's not to have a nice feeling. It's not to get special experiences. It's not to relax. You're training your mind to develop the ability to be strong and focus on what you decide to focus on, rather than being dragged from pillar to post by all the external world. This alone itself is so profound. So it takes effort. Because why does it take effort? Because we're addicted to floating around, following every thought, following every experience, you know. So it's a great training, I tell you. So what's going to happen is this. We're going to start with the first breath, maybe by the second, and by the second already, your mind's wandering off. It's natural. It's just exactly how we spend our lives. So it's like part of your mind is watching like a hawk. Think like this. And the it's like part of your mind is like, the Dalai Lama calls it a policeman. They give names to these different parts of our mind, which I'll talk about later. But he calls it like a policeman watching. So it's almost like, I use this analogy, this attention is like a child who's completely got no control, and you're walking on the edge of a cliff. Well, and this other part is watching like a hawk. If the kid stays on track, you don't interfere, but the millisecond the attention wanders off, this other part, they call it vigilance, brings the mind, brings it back to the breath. So if you've got to do that 50 times a minute, be happy. That's a good meditation. Don't think you failed. Because it's not possible to have attention first. It's not possible to have strong focus first. So don't have any expectations. Don't think of it in any way as holy or mystical or religious. Think of it as practical. You know? That's really, it brings you down to earth. So we're going to do 4 or 5 minutes. And the job is to pay attention to that sensation as it goes in and out. The millisecond you wander off, you simply bring your attention. Don't curse yourself, don't say, oh, I'm broken, blah, blah, blah. Just bring your mind back to the breath. You wander off again, bring your mind back to the breath. You forget what you're doing, bring your mind back to the breath. That's the job. That's it. Technical. That's it. So just get into the position again. Your legs, back, shoulders, relaxed muscles, hands, heads forward, chin tucked in, tip of the tongue behind the top teeth, jaw, lips apart, eyes looking down. But before you start focusing, just breathe in and out deeply a couple of times, all the way down to your abdomen. Don't do it loudly, you shouldn't hear the breath, just to locate that sensation. And once you've located the sensation, and then we'll just do that first, a couple of deep breaths, okay? A couple of really deep breaths all the way in, all the way out. And locate that sensation. Okay, so now with strong determination to yourself, I will watch the breath. I'm going to pay attention to that breath. That's it. Just watch the breath. Bring the mind back to the breath. Just the breath. Pay attention to the breath. Keep your mind sharp and alert. Trust the breath. Okay, it's 5 minutes, relax. When you have this practical attitude, not this kind of, because we're all so neurotic, we all know we are, and thoughts never stop, we frantically want it all to go away, don't we? So then we think, well, man, you meditate and make it all go away, so we become really hungry and greedy for peaceful feelings, Well, that's just as neurotic. So when you think of this technique as something practical, like when you learn to drive, when you learn to make a cake, it's practical, you don't get all cosmic about it. There are amazing kinds of meditations. In Tibetan Buddhism, there are unbelievable kinds of meditations. So many types of things. And our minds are amazing. As we progress, we do discover extraordinary levels of our mind. But we've got this kind of addiction, I think, in our culture to think of spiritual experiences, But the Buddhist view this is a very gradual, progressive, incremental process of focusing the mind, disciplining your body and speech, developing clarity, understanding the context, changing the mind. And it's from this that we develop strong, clear, kind, wise, compassionate qualities, It's a practical, ongoing thing, not some mystical thing. I cannot stress that enough, So important we down to earth about it. So any questions about that technique? Did it make sense?
Yes.
So, yes. Where's the mic? We need the mic. Good, yes, Tom. Yes.
So, what I've learned so far, meditation-wise,
This particular technique, yeah. So what's the question about it?
So the question is, inhaling and exhaling, kind of making a sound so that sound is louder than your thoughts.
I'm sorry, what?
So the question is, should the breath be loud? So
No, not loud, no. But don't worry, just loud or not, you're going to hear things no matter what, because our senses are very vivid. And we're also going to hear the sound of the breath, but that's not the point. No, you shouldn't force the breath, it should be natural, but slow, complete breaths all the way down, not shallow breaths, not forced. But it doesn't matter if it's loud, of course you can hear it, it's bound to be. But the main thing is simply to pay attention to that, just that sensation, this one here. So the noise will be there, the traffic will be there, that doesn't matter. The aim is to focus on that sensation, that's it. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
That's it. Yeah. So one of the things is this, when you accomplish this, and again, this is a technique that Hindus 3,000 years ago came up with, which the Buddha took, and which is an absolutely central technique, an absolutely crucial technique, in order to accomplish in the long term this potential that Buddha has found that we all have. So the long term is like a level of long term that we don't even discuss. Like I mentioned this in passing, but let me try and explain a bit more. The long term here is to actually access these much subtler levels of our own consciousness, our own mind. These words are used synonymously, okay? And this is the question yesterday, relationship between mind and feelings. We make this big distinction in our culture. We say, here's the mind and there are the feelings. Well, the word mind is used in a much broader, more experiential, more subjective way in Buddhism, It's referring to this entire spectrum of our inner experiences, thoughts, concepts, feelings, emotions, unconscious, subconscious, instinct, intuition, this entire spectrum. And then there are levels of our mind, as I say, we in our materialist views, the mind is the brain, don't even posit as existing. That's why we think it's mystical. Because we're so caught up in the materialist view of believing the mind is the brain, over, and it's about how to work with people at the time of death, how to live your life, to prepare for death, in the sense of impermanence, and how to help others to prepare for this process, you know. So it's a very typical kind of Buddhist approach. So the thing is, working on this for quite a while, then I read different things, you know. And one of the books I read was a book by an American medical journalist called The Undead. Well, it's not about zombies, okay? It's really a marvelous book, actually. He's a very funny fellow, Dick Teresi, I think his name is. It's really marvelous and amazing research, and it's all the contradictions and confusions and new findings that are coming up now as a result of the whole business of organ donation, farming organs, you know. So there's lots of things now. It used to be really simple in the materials, well, when death is, when life starts, when life ends, and then, but this is really being informed that a lot of things are coming up now when they discover that people come back to life. And this has always been happening. Supposedly dead people in the coffin, knock on the coffin, and they wake up again. So because this doesn't fit with our material as well, we just kind of think it's a bit weird, you know, so we don't really talk about it. There's so many experiences like this now. And then people also having he had a whole chapter on out-of-body experiences. He says himself he's a complete atheist about all this stuff, and he reports it very nicely, you know, and he's very funny as well. So many experiences of people who are medically, there's no way from the materialist view that they could be conscious, but nevertheless report these vivid out-of-body experiences, really, you know, forcing people who are convinced that consciousness is a function of the brain, but just maybe it isn't, because these are the examples that show it. So anyway, I think it's marvellous, you know. I mean, for example, one of the things he quoted was one nurse who was involved in the taking out of the organs of this one woman who's supposedly dead. The Buddhist view is when you stop breathing, you're not dead yet, your subtle consciousness is still there, and we might go into this, we'll see what happens. But it's a very clear view they have, you know, in the Buddhist view. Certainly the Vajrayana Buddhist. So there's this person who's called brain dead, and she's naturally been kept breathing, therefore her body's all warm and toasty, looking like a living person. Well, the Buddhist view is the mind is still there, but it's at a subtle level, not the gross level. But the Western view, she's dead. So they take on the good, you know, she's on the operating table, and because they consider that she's dead, they don't give her anaesthetic, as they take this big circular saw and proceed to cut her in half, you know. And as the nurse said, suddenly her heart went from 100 beats to 200 beats. And so you wonder what a dead person's heart is doing in response to this kind of fierce thing happening. You understand what I'm saying? And many people even come back alive after that. So it's really quite it's wonderful this information is coming out. And anyway, one doctor quoted in the book said, well, I can say now with certainty that consciousness is not a function of the brain. I can't say what it is, but at least I can say that much. So I think it's great these conversations are happening, you know? So anyway, the Buddhist view is your consciousness in your mind. These words are used broadly speaking synonymously. And they're referring to the entire living part of you. They're not denying there's a brain. And we've got amazing science about the brain. None of this contradicts that. This is the Buddhist view is, you know, we've got consciousness which itself is not physical. And you've got to take this on board as a hypothesis. You can't prove it immediately, obviously, you know. If you're interested in the Buddhist views, you've got to at least hypothesize the possibility that this could be so. It's the only way to enter into this stuff. So, we've got, as I said, in this more advanced and more esoteric teachings in Buddhism, Vajrayana or Buddhist Tantra, which is the same model that the Tibetan medical system uses. You know, what we mentioned briefly last night, we've got gross consciousness. And that comes along inextricably with this gross physicality. And they're inextricably linked. So you've got the consciousness, which is your sensory consciousness. In this case, your eye consciousness, and Buddhism means by that non-physical part of you that works hand in hand with the eyeball, the nerves, etc., etc., etc. You know. So consciousness is not physical. Then you've got the ear consciousness. Then you have your mental consciousness, and that's where the workshop is, as well as I puts it. That's what we have to learn to understand, to know, to unpack, to unravel, deconstruct, and then reconstruct to be the mind we want it to be, because it's our mind. So the first level, the gross level, and then we've got these much subtler levels. Like I said, we don't posit these. So if you were to see a person who had accomplished this technique, which is known as single point of concentration, broadly speaking, sometimes you read the word samadhi. Is a term used to refer to the mind of that person who has accomplished. And this technique is taught in terms of 9 stages of cultivation. And even if you were really qualified, which means you've already got a completely disciplined life and disciplined practice, you've given up attachment to lots of things, you're really ready to go off to the mountains, it could take you 3, 4, 5, 10 years to accomplish this. So we're talking a deadly, serious, long-term thing here. So 99.9% of us won't ever accomplish that. But doesn't matter. What I'm getting at is this. Even to begin, and you can already see it, even to begin a simple technique like this, in the morning, start your day with it, end your day with it, maybe starting with something like this, just starting with this, not to mention any other practices that we as Buddhists would choose to do. This is like a starting point. To make a decision to simply pay attention to your breath. You could be feeling completely berserk. It doesn't matter. The aim isn't to make all the thoughts go away. The aim isn't to relax. The aim isn't, the aim isn't to do all that. That's what we desperately wanted to do. We're frantic like little junkies to do the meditation, hopefully to get a nice gooey feeling. This is not the point. It's a training. It's like when you're 40 pounds overweight and you go to the gym. You know perfectly well you won't come back looking like Arnie Schwarzenegger. You've got to come back feeling 20 times worse. And the fat is still there. Do you see what I'm trying to say? And you know it's long term. You're not this junkie and then you come home and look in the mirror and then kill yourself because you don't look beautiful yet. Do you see my point? But we're such junkies to feel peaceful, which is okay. We frantically will grasp at anything and we really think of meditation like that. And then sometimes, because the mind is a pretty astonishing thing and has real subtle levels, and the Buddhists would say we've got this massive unconscious that actually carries stuff from countless lives in the past, that's the Buddha's view, and we'll talk about this, then don't be surprised if you do calm down for 5 minutes, or you do attempt to focus on your breath, all sorts of things will come up naturally. But we cling to those things as like some special thing. Well, they're a drag. They're in the way. They're inconvenient. It's not a question of having special experiences. Are we communicating here the point of view? This is a practical skill, And if you happen after 5 minutes to feel nice, well, I'm happy for you. That's a bonus. It's not the goal. The goal is to train your mind to be focused and disciplined. So almost immediately, what you can say is, almost immediately, you can say that what you're learning in this skill is something you can then bring to bear in your daily life. Yeah. So when you're driving the car, normally you get up in the morning, we're unconscious, we don't know what's going on, we don't know what we're feeling, we're just on autopilot, get the breakfast, fix the kids, and all the stuff's in the background. But we're not paying attention because we're so busy, When you're driving the car, all the stuff's there, and some guy comes in front and you go berserk. We know this because all the stuff's cooking away and we're never paying attention. So doing something like this, let's say you wake up really frantic, you had a fight the night before, you're still feeling miserable, your dreams are terrible. It's horrible, we know this stuff every day. So one of the things we've got to have the courage to know, okay, this is fine. Yes, of course we want it to go away, it might not yet, so be brave, sit with it, live with it, let it be there, like an old junkie. I like to talk about my ugly roommates. And my roommates are all my thoughts, And you've got to learn to live with those roommates, I'm sorry, they're not going to go away overnight. It's a really important point. We've got to have the courage to face what's there, but not to buy into them all. So when you do this 5 minutes, one of the common, in the technique, when they describe it in the texts, they say that one of the signs of success, it's like coming home from the gym and feeling terrible. You know it's a good pain. You don't freak out because you have pain when you come home from the gym. You know that something's happening. It's the same here. One of the first signs of success when we begin to look at our mind is we think we're getting worse, but we're not. We're just noticing what's always been there, and which we've never noticed. So it's a whole approach that we're not used to thinking, You can't be all this, you understand what I'm saying? So you've got to be prepared to be in for the long haul. The long-term goal here, forget long-term single point of concentration. Forget that one, unless you're a serious person who wants to go to the mountains for years, or do an hour a day, or lots of people do. But the immediate benefit is because you're training yourself for at least 5 minutes to step out of your head. And not only does the chatting never stop, but we're not even aware of the chatting until the noises are very loud. So it's just this constant energy, and it's informing all the way we feel every day, So what we're doing in this 5 minutes is training ourselves to just focus on one thing. The consequence of that is you can't help but hear the thoughts more clearly. And that's just the beginning. You've got a way to go in those thoughts. So you're in for a lot more. So, and the point is, we want to notice the thoughts because we want to begin to work with all these crazy thoughts. We want to begin to have conversations with our thoughts and start to deconstruct them and change, do some cognitive therapy. Are you communicating here?
Yes, totally.
You understand? So you're glad to see all the crazy thoughts. In the beginning, it's just like chaos. It's like James Joyce, unedited, raving on. That's okay, don't worry about it. So you do your 5 minutes, don't expect to feel better. You might be feeling dreadful, it doesn't matter, it's training. It's like when you do your gardening. I don't care if you feel happy or sad, you've got to do your gardening, otherwise the stuff doesn't grow, and you've got to let the weeds get control. You've just got to do it every day as a technique, as a skill, not as a junky thing to make it have a blissful feeling. So important to think of it this way. And then slowly, you bring to bear this skill that you're learning in your daily life. So when you are driving, because you're learning to pay attention, first to your breath, and that attention is that you're developing it, then you can't help but pay attention to the thoughts. So that as the things on the road, you're not just paying attention to what's going on out there, you're paying attention to all the thoughts. And then you're learning to have more control over them. Therefore the words might not vomit out your mouth. Slowly is how it works, But really it's a slow process. So be humble about it. Have confidence and long term. And it needs effort. Believe me, it needs effort. Effort means doing something you don't want to do. We know that. But you've got to see the benefit of it. And it's long term. And it's practical. Okay? That's that. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please. What time's lunch coming? 12:30. Okay. Have you scheduled a tea break? Okay. Okay, fine. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Because we're parents and I personally work with kids, do you recommend to introduce this be aware of your
Why
body?
not? Try it out.
Yeah.
Why not?
To start young, to help
Why
this.
not? But different kids. Really berserk kids, maybe not. Even as I was an older person, when I was 30 and I first heard these teachings, I had zero interest in doing something as boring as watching my breath. I had no interest in this technique. I didn't do it. I had no interest whatsoever. So don't get all cliche and think that you're a Buddhist if you watch your breath. Okay? That's naive. There's lots of ways of helping children, and if I can really berserk ones, don't try to suppress their feelings. Don't try to tell them to calm down. As a kid, I tell you to mind your own business. I had the courage. Sometimes you use that energy and you channel it by getting them to do things. Do you see my point?
Absolutely.
The goal isn't to make all the thoughts go away, even your own thoughts. The goal is to know your thoughts and have some control over your thoughts. But that's too much to ask for a child. So some children have a very vivid imagination. All kids have a vivid imagination. But you've got to get the sense of the different kinds of children, But to demand that they sit still for a few minutes is too much to bear. I would have exploded. Even when I was 30, I would have exploded doing it. Okay? You've got to know your own person, There are so many ways. The goal is to channel and focus. So with kids, even just to get them to do good things with their energy. That's a way to help them channel their energy, not suppress it, And that's been my style in my life. Using my energy to channel it, and then from that method, you then can develop clarity to see your thoughts. There's different ways. Do you understand? And there's lots of, because we're so vivid as children, have got very vivid imaginations, there's lots of so-called meditations, visualizations, and ways to think. And there's marvellous methods you can use, But this one, it really is about, even as I said, an adult, I had no interest. I didn't want to bother trying to do it. And many people get obsessed and think this is being a Buddhist. Oh, I can't meditate, I can't sit still, I can't be a Buddhist. It's ridiculous, Do you understand?
Yes,
Thank you. You know what you need.
Yeah, I don't want to create a version to them of I'm trying to.
Anyway, I understand that. You use your common sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Common sense, yeah, common sense.
Yes.
I noticed I have to meditate somewhat, and I've noticed that when I stop, my dreams become.
Which kind of meditation do you do?
What you taught us today.
Concentration.
Yes.
Okay, then
What I've noticed when I stop, let's say a few months, my dreams become very.
get closer.
When I've noticed when I stop doing it, my
I
dreams.
didn't hear, I'm really sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've noticed that when I stop, I go a few months without meditation, my dreams become very unstable, they go everywhere. Is there a reason?
I don't understand, is it during when you meditate or when you don't?
When I stop. Let's say,
Oh, I don't know, darling. That could be related. I really couldn't say. I don't know.
okay,
I don't know.
thank you.
Okay. What's going on? Huh? What? I think it just muffles easily. We have to be a bit clear with our words, I think. The acoustics in here is very kind of echoey. That's okay. Okay. So we've talked the last few days, and even a bit last night, about the mind, okay? So I want to begin to discuss this other component in Buddhism, which is really huge. Not for every Buddhist. I mean, if you go to a Zen center, you won't hear many of the things that you're hearing here, because the traditions in the different countries developed in very different ways. So the tradition I'm discussing from here is from a tradition in Tibet that began in about 7th, 8th century. And in there's this really strong monastic university system where they study the Buddhist philosophy for, 10, 20, 30 years, really intensive, which comes from the great, what they call the Nalanda monastery system, which is back in India, at the height of the flourishing of Mahayana Buddhism in India, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th century, which tracked all the way back, of course, to the Buddha. And so this is where, they study the whole kind of, the kind of a Buddhist worldview. It's not just a question of learning to meditate. That is a Buddhist thing. And that's really, many people, that's what they do. A Zen person wouldn't study much of the philosophy, would hardly ever even mention the word karma, and would do mostly a meditation. In the Thai tradition, it's a bit similar. Different traditions have different approaches. Even in Tibet, there are different approaches. So the approach here, which is the one that suits my mind, which is why I'm talking this way, is like the big picture view. Because Buddhism is actually an entire world view. It's a whole way of describing what are sentient beings, what is the mind, what is happiness, what is suffering, what is the universe, what is matter, what is, it's quite vast actually. So not everybody is interested in that, and many of you might not want all of that, but nevertheless I'm going to talk about some of it, So one of the crucial parts for a Buddhist who's in this tradition that's crucial, that's central to your daily practice, and is one of the really fundamental, central pieces of Buddha's big picture, Buddha's explanation of the universe. And it is a massive point. And this is called the law of karma. So we know this word is really common these days. It's used around by so many people. But I think even among Buddhists, it's used in a very colloquial way, So let me just describe it a little bit. And I would say that, understanding the mind in depth and studying Buddhist psychology and then learning to utilize the techniques to help you know your own mind and change it, that's the job finally. That's the actual job. But for a Buddhist, what informs your capacity to do that is this business about karma. So I'll try and explain. This is huge. And I know it's a major part of the approach that I have learned from my Tibetan teachers and the way they've studied in the monasteries, and certainly the way I live my life. So, okay. The broader piece I want to get into here, the sort of the broad point I want to make before I get into it is, and we can begin to see this, we mentioned it a few days ago, I think, that we can all see, we've all got thoughts. We can all see everybody has thoughts. You could even argue, and using this word thoughts, certainly the Buddhist view would be that animals also have thoughts. They have certain, but these thoughts we all have, we can see that so much of it is all at the level of assumption. It's sort of like instinctive, it's intuitive, it's second nature. We don't think it, we don't think we have thoughts. So in other words, I use this example, I remember I mentioned this a couple of days ago. In Malaysia, last year, the year before, one of the plane crashes, all the people were Malaysian, were Muslim, and a pair of parents were asked how they were feeling about the death of their daughter in that plane crash. And these two parents were peaceful. They said, she belongs to God. He has taken her back. We are peaceful. Now, that's a series of words, wouldn't you agree? And those come from thoughts, don't they? So in other words, we can deduce, putting it this way, that those people, we label them Muslims, they have a series of philosophical views about the world, don't they? and that's called God created us. That's called having faith in God. So the point I'm making is this, it's obvious. That viewpoint, which is a viewpoint in their mind, which is their philosophy, look at the way it informed their life. They were peaceful people. So we can deduce that their thoughts, the way they thought about the world, caused them to be peaceful. Would you agree with that? So we mightn't agree with those thoughts. If you're a communist, you'd criticise those thoughts, wouldn't you? So now, if let's say you got a communist philosophy, and and then you'd start, maybe a communist one. Certainly, when I was an old radical lefty, what I would have done when I saw that air crash is start to, accusing the airlines, the capitalists for doing this, and the poor people. Do you understand? You'd have a whole other way of interpreting that scenario, wouldn't you? And then that would cause you to get angry, and then you'd try and kind of, go and bomb the airline. I mean, you sort of see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those obvious, it's a no-brainer that those actions are informed by the thoughts those particular people had. Now, I've got a brother-in-law, obviously he's a materialist. He said, oh, I don't believe in anything, meaning he hasn't got a religious set of viewpoints in his mind. Do you understand?
Yes.
Well, Buddha would laugh and say, don't be ridiculous. His mind is riddled with a series of beliefs. So what are the thoughts of a materialist? Well, a materialist, my nephew, my brother-in-law, he believes that his mother made him. He believes his brain is the mind. He believes that suffering is when bad things happen. He believes that happiness is when good things happen. So that's a series of beliefs. That's a bunch of viewpoints, isn't it? So believing in God who created you, which caused you to be peaceful, look at the consequence. Believing that all the rich people cause the problem, then you get angry, look at the consequence. Believing that your mother made you and that you didn't ask to get born and it's not your fault and your mind is the brain, that's a series of assumptions such that when certain things happen, you'll respond in a certain way based upon those viewpoints. So in other words, the Buddha's view is hardly obvious, it's pretty obvious. Everybody has got a series of viewpoints, but because they're so instinctive, we don't even label them viewpoints. Ian, my brother-in-law, doesn't think he's got a viewpoint. He doesn't think he's got a viewpoint. He thinks what he thinks is true. That's the point about a viewpoint. You get a really fundamentalist person, like a racist, or a person who's a really fundamentalist, let's say, white supremacist or something. He doesn't really think he's got a viewpoint. He thinks that whatever's in his mind is true.
Yeah.
Are you seeing my point? So that's when you get fundamentalist. And all the Buddha is saying is our minds, every mind of every sentient being is programmed with so many viewpoints, so many assumptions, so many thoughts, so many beliefs because of having thought them so much before. And here's in the Buddha's view of karma, we're going to go into it. We come fully programmed from the first second of conception, not from our past grandma and grandpa, but from our own mind. So the point, the fundamental Buddha's point is, and this is where you can even begin with watching your breath, you step out of this chaos in here and start slowly this long-term process of becoming familiar with all your billions of viewpoints. And there are layers upon layers upon layers upon layers, and they're gross to subtle to very subtle. And this is the crucial approach in Buddhism, that we must unpack and unravel these series of assumptions to incredibly subtle degrees, to really see, not just see it, but then just change these concepts, to change these viewpoints, Are we communicating?
Yes.
Wow. So the fact is, many of my friends in prison, they were all excited, they got a Buddhist book, they started reading, and then, one of my friends on death row in Texas, he then wrote, and he said, Ravina, I've decided I'm not a Buddhist anymore, I've gone back to being a Catholic. We all sent him a card and we rejoiced. Oh, we're so happy for you, he said, So my view of being a Buddhist and helping the people in prison, we were giving them tools, but I didn't care if they became a Buddhist, that's their business. All I cared was I gave them, hopefully, the inspiration and the courage to know they can look into their own minds and change them. Become a Muslim, become a Christian, I don't care, But whatever it is, learn to know your mind, learn to see the stuff that makes you crazy, learn to see the stuff that makes you happy, and learn to see the stuff that harms others and benefit others and live your life according to that. That's called ethics, This underpins all the Buddha's view. But again, like I say, Buddha doesn't own these ideas. He just happens to be a great expert at them, I would suggest. He's not a creator. So just remember where all this information comes from then. I mentioned this during the week. I was born a Catholic. So naturally, like those Muslims, I believed in God. As we say, I believed The superior being God was my creator. Therefore, he was the boss. He ran the laws, he ran the rules, he created morality, he created me, he created everything. So therefore, obviously he's the boss, and obviously he's to be obeyed. So that's, I always quote this, my Jesuit priest friend, who I have these nice conversations with. There's a huge point actually. We'll go into this more when I look at the Buddhist view. I asked him, by definition, what is a sin? He said, by definition, a sin is going against God's will, doing what God said not to do. Now that's a really powerful philosophical position. Now my feeling is that philosophical position is the position we all have, this dualistic view that morality is information from up here somewhere that's imposed upon us. It's by God or mummy or daddy or the judge or the police or the laws or they out there somewhere. And we feel like it's imposed upon us and we're supposed to do what they say, which is why we get resentful. The teacher says, do that. Well, who do you think you are, we'll say, And then if we do what the teacher says not to do, but she doesn't see us, we think, oh, great, I got away with it. This is our view of morality. We're like these, the Buddhist view is that's kind of infantile. It's kind of dualistic and it's infantile. Because the Buddhist view is, he doesn't assert a creator. We don't need creating, he says. It's an unnecessary embellishment. He's not a creator himself. Therefore, but he, like Jesus, says don't kill, don't lie, don't steal. He says the same, but for the very different reason. We discussed this last night a bit, So first of all, the Buddha's view of what a negative action is. Sometimes people even translate it as sin, and that's okay, although it's a shocking word for us in our culture. So negative action is an action, not one that he says you shouldn't do, which defines its being wrong. Because, this priest said there is natural law. You can agree that killing does harm others, but the real reason it's a sin is because God said so. And with the view of a creator, that's a profound view. Having complete faith in God, I'm not criticizing it. It's an amazing view. If that makes you happy, look at those Muslims. My goodness. That's an incredible view. I think all the Christians and all the Muslims and all the people who believe in a creator on this earth really did have faith in God. They'd mind their own business and wouldn't harm anybody because it's going against God's will. Give the world to be a blissful place, quite frankly. And that's really tough, But the Buddha's view is not like that. So the point about the Buddha was he's a regular guy. He was a regular guy who became, and they even use this word in Buddhism, a superior being. In Sanskrit, that's Arya being. So Buddha's view is every single person, every mind possessor, it's a very nice word in Tibetan for what's translated usually as sentient being. The word mind possessor, sen chen, we're all mind possessors. And every Buddha's finding through his own experience in the depth of his own mind, having utilized these skills and done this job that we're describing here, removed from his own mind all the neuroses, removed every atom of ego and negativity and dualistic nonsense, and fully developed the goodness within us. So in essence, that's the fundamental finding of the Buddha, that every sentient being has this potential to fully develop the goodness, wisdom, clarity, joy, the stuff that we know is good, intelligence, blah, 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 and rid the mind utterly to the subtlest degree of all nonsense. Which, psychologically speaking, is a shocking concept in our culture. There's no such thing like this. That's his own finding, and you are then a superior being. This is what Buddha's found. So, this is the first one. So, this is not coming from revelation. In other words, I always like to use this example. If I were Einstein here, and I'm telling you about relativity, you know perfectly well I didn't have a vision of it. You know it wasn't revealed to me by a superior being. I didn't have a dream about it. You sincerely hope I'm not speculating. You assume it's coming from my own hard work and my investigation and my own observation. And I'm absolutely not asking you to believe me. We know this. That's what we call science. Well, that's the Buddha's view. That's identical. Buddha's this guy who every word that is Buddhism, and you better get checked what is Buddhism, because a lot of rubbish published, because anybody thinks anything goes, and I'm allowed to, I can have a meditation, go to a weekend course, and then I get a vision and I write a book about it. No one says you can't. So there's a lot of rubbish that's published, even under the word Buddhism. So what is valid Buddhism has to be information that came from his mind and anybody else who's followed that path. So that all Buddha is saying is, this is what I have seen to be true, that your consciousness is not physical, that your mind has the potential to be fully developed in goodness and rid of all badness, that your mind does not come from a superior being, that your consciousness does not come from your mummy and daddy, that your consciousness is not your brain, and it certainly can't come from nowhere, and it comes from previous moments of itself going back and back and back and back and back, and will continue when you die. So, you know, from Buddhist view, your mind is like a river of mental moments, and it's yours. What's in it? You put there. 57 lives ago, maybe. So sure, this is not fitting with our usual world view, but this is the Buddha's own experiential, direct observation with his own mind at a subtler level. But this, and the law of karma is actually just referring to the natural law of cause and effect, but specifically to the Buddha in relation to the causes of happiness and the causes of suffering. That's what he deals with. So for him, the law of karma is a natural law. He didn't make it up. He hasn't created it. He didn't invent it. It wasn't revealed to him. He's not speculating. He is, like Einstein, he would suggest, he's observed it. So you don't go and believe Einstein. If you want to prove he's right, it's obvious. You take his information and you track it one step at a time using his methodology. And then you can prove yourself that he's right. This is the same in Buddhism. So believing in it is okay. You're allowed to believe in mathematics. But it won't do you much good, will it, if you don't understand how to use it. You can believe in relativity. What good is that to you? And even we say, oh, it's science. Well, excuse me, whose science is it? It's not yours until you've done it. But we believe in it. We believe in it. We say it's science, but it's somebody else's science. Well, you could say the same for Buddha. He's proven it to be true from his own experience, that reincarnation is the way it is, the mind is the brain, karma runs the universe, suffering is this, happiness is that. You don't have to believe this. He's telling you what he's found from his own experience. It's up to us to prove it to be true, to experience the truth of it ourselves. That's what practice is. Are we seeing the point? You see the point I'm making? So this is a hard job, because we're all boring, we're all bone lazy, we're all intellectually lazy, and it takes a lot of work to do this. And it takes many lifetimes, the Buddha would say, you know. This is why I like to say that Buddhism is my working hypothesis, and I'm taking it one step at a time, and I'm not in a hurry. It's okay. And you can only go one step at a time. I can only go one step at a time with Einstein. I've got to start learning mathematics, and 1 + 1 is 2, and then slowly, and each step of the way, I'll tick that box. Oh, okay, I proved that to be true. Yep, I proved 1 + 1 is 2. Then you go to multiplication, then you go to division, then you go to this, then you go to physics, and you all the way, each step of the way. And as the Dalai Lama says, if you do the same with Buddhism, each step of the way, you check the box, you proved it to be true, and you experience it for yourself. But at some point, if you prove it's not true, then you must reject the Buddha. It's very simple. So it really, it's in this way, you can see, it's not merely having a nice experience. It's not merely controlling your thoughts. This is the big picture view. And of course, 99% of us might not want the big picture view. It's just that that's what I want, the big picture. And so far I'm using Buddha's model of the universe as I'm using as my hypothesis. Are we communicating?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So what's this law of karma? How do they talk about it? Like all this stuff is dealt with in massive depth in all the literature over the centuries. And when you study it in the monasteries, in the monastic university system, you study it hugely, but just superficially, hugely, because it slowly becomes the view, if you choose, that informs the way you see the universe. Of course it does, that's the whole idea, So, okay, then what's karma then? Just some ways of talking about it simply. First of all, it's referring to this law of cause and effect, and it's basically another way of talking about it is that it's related to the mind. It's directly related to the mind. The law of karma runs in, plays out in minds and lives. It's not just something in the sky somewhere. It's a natural law. The term Buddha uses to refer to what is the cause of happiness and what is the cause of suffering. What is the cause of me? Why does this happen? Why does that happen? All the questions we have, these will be Buddha's answers. So of course a person, like I said, who's a Buddhist, is taking these on board as their hypothesis, because you can't prove it immediately. But you've got to open your mind to the possibilities so you can learn to work with it. Like anything, So, okay. The Buddha's view is your consciousness is a beginningless and endless continuity of mental moments, which is already ridiculous to us. Second, it's not physical. Therefore, it's not the product of a creator, and you're not the handiwork of a creator, and you're not the handiwork of your parents. That doesn't mean they didn't play a vivid role. It doesn't mean their genes didn't play a role. It doesn't mean that what they do to you and how they beat you or love you doesn't play a role. Because we are interdependent we are interdependent beings. We are hugely influenced by external events, there's no question. But the Buddha's deal is emphasizing the centrality of consciousness, one's own mind. So you could say this law of karma, which Buddha would say is a natural law, like botany, like gravity. It merely occurs. I think it's an interesting point. You know, we say it's a natural law as opposed to what law? Well, it's called God's law. There's a major thing in the universe, isn't it? There's God's law. Then there's natural law. Well, science will talk about using natural law. Buddha's deal is the same. So natural law means, it's quite profound at this point, natural law means that something merely happens, given the nature of the universe, given the way we are, with the sun coming up in the morning and the moon coming up and doing this and all the different things we talk about in the universe, the natural way that things are all existing interdependently, then we discover there's a thing called botany. Maybe we've never learned it, but we can see it. No one made it up. But there have been very clever people who's observed the world and have articulated these laws. It's called the laws of botany. Are you seeing what I'm saying?
Yes.
There's laws of mathematics. You know, that clever Arab fellow way back when who brought up the concept of 0 to 9 as opposed to those weird Romans with their strange letters, you know. I mean, look at the consequence of just that clever person. He didn't make up numbers. He simply articulated conceptually and look at the way we use numbers. Everything exists because we're clever with numbers. Engineering and architecture, everything. Computers. Do you understand? So these are natural laws. No one made them, but clever minds can see them and articulate them. Well, that's how Buddha will talk about the law of karma. So this is a big thing, because it's shocking to us to hear this. So, okay, what Buddha says is, your consciousness is not physical. And he's saying, every millisecond of what any mind or consciousness does, and we're talking the mind of a dog, the mind of an ant, the mind of a giraffe, the mind of a human, because we're all sentients, sentient beings, mind possessors, as far as the Buddha is concerned. Every millisecond of what any sentient being thinks or does or says, and this is a process that's happening a million times a second every single day, every millisecond of those is programming our consciousness, or sowing seeds. They use the analogy of seeds. Every single thought we have, and there's so many, and we're talking about the subtlest level of the instinctive and intuitive ones, which we don't even notice until we get deeper into our own minds. They're leaving imprints, they're leaving seeds, they're programming, they're leaving impressions in our consciousness. They're leaving seeds in our consciousness every millisecond. And those seeds, unless you pull them out, will naturally stay in the mind and will expand and get bigger, and they will grow in the future and will ripen in 4 different ways. First, as the type of rebirth we get. I mean, the actual mechanics of all this stuff is insanely sophisticated, and it's all there in all the literature for anybody who wants to study it, and anybody who wants to go into their mind and observe this, which the Buddha says can be observed because it's a knowable phenomenon. That's how he's talking about it. Otherwise he's making it up. If he couldn't cognize it, and how can he present it? And if he presents it, that means it's a method for you to do it as well. You just have to ask to want to, that's all. So that all these seeds we've planted in our mind, every thought so to seed, will ripen in 4 ways. First way is the type of rebirth. The Buddha would posit a whole spectrum of types of consciousnesses that come along, and all these consciousnesses, these beings, all have a different level of physicality. So you can use the ones we can see immediately, like dogs, or elephants, or worms, or a fish. They are mind possessors, just like us, Buddha says. And they too are experiencing the result of certain actions, and it's all, as I said, it's all highly complex how it actually occurs. And a particular seed was triggered at the time of death of the past life that then programmed that consciousness, let's say, of a particular person, might have been a human, that due to, say, certain actions, a particular karmic seed was triggered that then programmed that consciousness in several weeks' time to find its way to a lion mummy's womb. So the first way the karma ripened for that person, a human say, is to be born as a lion. So clearly that's a sentient being with feelings, with emotions, with whatever you want to use the words, with tendencies, with viewpoints, but not articulate, not intelligent. You go to school, that mummy lied, she go to school, they're totally programmed from her countless past habits. Just like us. First one, a lie at birth. Second way that our karma rivals is as our tendencies, our personality traits. And this includes, like a mummy lion, the tendency to kill. The only method she knows to get breakfast is to kill that buffalo, rip its guts out for breakfast. She doesn't know any other way. Why? Because she's programmed in killing. We will use other methods. So we've got other tendencies, haven't we? We can see you've got a tendency to lie, for example. You can see it, some people. No one taught them to lie, but this kid just lies. You're heartbroken. Why? I didn't teach them this. It's a tendency. Where from? Having lied before. Another kid, they just, like a story, is a son of a friend of mine, the moment he saw fishing, he fell in love with fishing. He spent his life killing fish. Tendency to kill. Another kid, 3 years old, she's taking the lice out of his head, my friend, out of her boy's head. And he's in tears of compassion. Mummy, don't hurt them, it's their home, leave them alone. He was trying every way possible for her to leave the lice alone. He was in tears of compassion for the lice. She hadn't taught him this. It was a tendency. He's like 40-something now, and he's never killed a living being. So we can deduce he's got a tendency to not kill. What from? Consciously deciding to not kill. Another kid is good at music. Another kid is good at, torture. Remember one of those serial killers I read about years ago? He's talked about when he was a tiny child. His mother didn't teach him. He would have this powerful craving, yearning to torture creatures, and he got pleasure from it. He knew he wasn't taught this. He knew he had to keep it quiet. Another child, my friend Panos in Greece, he told me when he was 6 years old, walking down the street of Athens with his Greek Orthodox mummy, and he sees a poster of a half-naked lady on a cinema, and he says, "Mummy, why is my penis standing up?" He's 6 years old, right? His mummy, she hadn't taught him this. The Buddha would say because he's programmed with attachment to having sex with girls, Another boy I read about furries. Have you heard about furries? I'll tell you about furries. There's a whole group, you go online, you'll see, there's a whole group of people, many of them now, who have this very powerful attachment, wait for it, to have sexual contact with their stuffed toys. Okay? So this boy I read about in Vanity Fairs 20 years ago. Since he was a tiny kid at school, he got his little thing stood up when he saw the Mickey Mouse mascot, not the girls, at the sports. So of course we think that's weird, and we all think, I believe it's true. Well, guess what? Where's that from? A tendency to be attached to animals. I'm not joking here, We bring all our tendencies with us, good ones and bad. Why you want to be loving and kind and play good at music, be good at football, whatever your tendencies are. You see, the materialist view is really very complex. It says they come from mummy's genes. A lot of it, we come from mummy's training, But what about all the wacko kids? Just recently I remember reading in the New York Times a memoir of one of the mothers of the Columbine kids, you can see this poor mother was tortured, has been tortured for 20 years. Because she's a good human being. You can see it. She's good. She did not teach her boy to be this way. She's still herself shocked and speechless and trying to work out, agonized. Why? Because she, like the world, thinks that she created this boy. Do you see what I'm saying? That must be beyond anguish for her. Because she made this boy. That's our view. She made the boy. Therefore, she is responsible. But the Buddha would say she's not. He brought these tendencies with him, So even if we can't, we're not clairvoyant and can prove this is true yet, I find it a really helpful philosophy, quite frankly, at least I can hypothesize it, until I can prove it wrong. I'm prepared to stick with it until I prove it wrong. Are you seeing my point here? Buddha might be wrong, I don't mind, I'm happy to find it wrong. But so far, at least it's an answer, and I find it workable. The more I study it, the more I use it in my life, the more I think about it, personally, I find it workable. At least it's a hypothesis that works, Do you understand?
Yes.
That's my choice, of course. The third, let me finish first, the whole deal. We'll have questions. We're going to have tea. We're going to have tea break, we're going to have it now. So we better stop now. Keep your questions and we'll have a
No.
tea break.